And when a man moves on quickly, the first thing most women think is, was I that easy to replace? The answer is no, but that's the illusion. It looks like he's happy, like he's found someone better, like your time together meant nothing. And that's exactly the point. It's all an illusion. Men don't process emotions the way women do. They don't sit and grieve immediately after a breakup. Instead, they look for distractions. They look for something or someone to fill the void that's been left behind. It's why you see them moving on so fast. They're not actually healed. They're not actually happy. They're just covering up the emptiness, and the only way they know how, by jumping into something new. Think about it. If he had really moved on, if he was truly at peace with everything, would he need to rush into another relationship? Would he need to constantly post pictures, act like he's on top of the world, make sure everyone, including you, sees how happy he is? No. A man who has genuinely moved on doesn't need to prove it to anyone. He doesn't need to make it a show. But when a man quickly replaces you, it's not about love, it's about avoidance. Avoidance of the pain, the loneliness, the reality of what's actually happening. Because facing emotions requires strength. And let's be honest, most men don't have that strength right after a breakup. So instead of dealing with it, they cover it up. They find a new distraction, a new woman to play the role of the person they lost. And here's the truth they don't want you to know. A rebound isn't a relationship, it's a coping mechanism. It's something to keep them occupied so they don't have to sit alone with their thoughts. Because if they did, they'd have to face the truth that moving on isn't as easy as they want it to be. A new relationship doesn't erase old feelings, it doesn't erase memories, it doesn't erase the bond you had. No matter how much he tries to act like he's fine, there are moments late at night, in the silence, in between conversations with this new person, where his mind drifts back to you. And here's what happens next. Eventually, the rebound high fades. At first, everything feels exciting because it's new, it's different, it's a distraction, but that wears off. He starts to realize that he's not actually over you. He starts to compare. He starts to see that this new person doesn't understand him the way you did, doesn't connect with him on the same level, doesn't give him the same energy. And that's when the regret kicks in. That's why you see men come back. That's why you get those late night texts, those unexpected calls, those sudden signs that he's checking up on you, because deep down he knows that he never really moved on. He just ran away from his emotions. So when you see him with someone new, don't fall for the lie. Don't let it shake your confidence. Don't let it make you question your worth, because the truth is he's not in love. He's just avoiding the pain of losing someone irreplaceable. When a man jumps into something new right after a breakup, it's not because he's deeply in love. It's not because he's found someone better. It's because he needs to prove a point to himself, to you, and to the world. Men have egos. They don't want to appear weak, hurt, or affected by a breakup. The idea of sitting alone, reflecting on what went wrong, and dealing with emotions doesn't appeal to most men. Instead, they chase validation. They want to feel like they're still desirable, still in control, still the one who came out on top. And the easiest way to do that? Get with someone new as fast as possible. This is why so many men seem to move on overnight. It's not about love. It's about proving that they can. It's about making sure that you see it, that others see it, that their friends don't think they've lost anything. They want to appear unbothered, even if deep down they're anything but. And that's why he's putting on a show. Every picture, every social media post, every exaggerated display of happiness, it's not just about him and the new person. It's about who's watching. He wants you to see it. He wants you to wonder. He wants you to feel like he's already replaced you. Because in his mind, if you believe that, then he's won the breakup. But here's the irony. If he was truly over it, he wouldn't need to prove anything. He wouldn't need a rush, wouldn't need a show off. Wouldn't need to make sure you know he's with someone new. Because when a man genuinely moves on, he doesn't care about your reaction. He doesn't care about appearances. He just lives his life. This need to prove something is why rebounds fail. Because they're not built on real connection, real attraction, or real feelings. They're built on insecurity. They're built on the need to cover up the fact that deep down, he's still struggling with the loss. He might not admit it, he might not even realize it, but if he was truly at peace, he wouldn't need a replacement. And here's where it gets even deeper. The validation he's chasing, it's temporary. At first, having someone new makes him feel good. It strokes his ego. It makes him feel like he's still desirable. But eventually, that high fades. Eventually, he starts to realize that no amount of distraction can truly erase what he lost. That's when the regret starts creeping in. Because now he's not just dealing with the end of one relationship, he's dealing with the fact that the new one isn't fulfilling him either. He thought he could just replace you, just swap you out like nothing happened. But people aren't interchangeable. Connections aren't replaceable. So while he's busy trying to convince himself and everyone else that he's moved on, the reality is different. The reality is he's running from his emotions, he's avoiding the truth, and the more he tries to prove he's over you, the more obvious it is that he's not. That's why you should never let it affect you. Don't fall for the illusion. Don't let his need to prove something make you question yourself. Because at the end of the day, the only person he's trying to convince is himself. It's easy to look at his new relationship and assume the worst. You see the pictures, the dates, the smiles, and you think, maybe he really is happy. Maybe he's moved on. Maybe he's already found someone better. But here's what you need to understand. Surface level attraction will never replace deep emotional connection. Right now, everything might look perfect, but that's because it's new. New things always feel exciting. They always seem better. They don't carry the weight of history, of arguments, of shared struggles. They don't yet demand effort or commitment. But just because something is fresh doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it will last. What you had with him wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just physical. It was built on time, on emotions, on experiences that shaped the connection. You knew each other's flaws. You had inside jokes. You shared struggles, supported each other, and built a history that cannot be erased overnight. And whether he admits it or not, he knows that. But here's the thing about men. They like easy. They like things that don't challenge them, that don't force them to reflect, that don't require them to grow. And a new relationship, it's easy. It doesn't demand emotional depth yet. It doesn't require him to face his past or acknowledge his mistakes. It's a temporary escape. That's why so many men jump from one woman to the next. They don't want to deal with the real issues. They just want to feel something new. They want the excitement of fresh attention, the illusion of a better situation, the distraction from what's actually going on inside them. But here's where reality kicks in. The excitement doesn't last. Once the initial spark fades, once they've exhausted all the surface level fun, the truth starts to reveal itself. He starts to notice that this new person doesn't understand him the way you did. She doesn't know his habits, his moods, the things that make him tick. She doesn't challenge him the way you did. She doesn't have that deeper connection, that bond that was built over time. That's when he starts comparing. Maybe not out loud, maybe not even consciously at first, but it happens. He remembers the way you supported him, the way you made him feel, the moments that meant something. And suddenly, what seemed like a fresh start begins to feel empty. Because no matter how much he tries to convince himself otherwise, you can't fake real connection. You can't manufacture history. You can't replace depth with momentary excitement. And whether he realizes it now or later, at some point, he will feel the difference. And here's where your power comes in. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to compete, to compare, to analyze every move he makes, because at the end of the day, you already had something real. And real connection doesn't just disappear, it stays with a person. It lingers in the back of their mind, in the quiet moments when no one's watching. So let him pretend, let him play the game, let him try to convince himself that he's found something better, because deep down, he knows the truth. Some connections can never be replaced. The biggest mistake you can make after a breakup is chasing, begging, or trying to prove your worth to a man who walked away. He moved on quickly. He's with someone new. Good. Let him go. Because the moment you truly stop caring, the moment you shift your focus away from him and onto yourself, everything changes. Right now, he thinks he has control. He thinks you're watching, waiting, wondering. And if you play into that, if you react, if you show weakness, if you keep looking for answers, you're feeding his ego. You're giving him exactly what he wants, the validation that you're still affected, that he still holds power over you. But imagine this instead. Imagine you completely let go. Imagine you stop checking, stop caring, stop giving him the reaction he's expecting. Suddenly the dynamic shifts. Now he's the one wondering. Now he's the one questioning, because men are wired to value what they can't have. They only truly recognize loss when they feel it. This is why walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. It's not about games, not about manipulation. It's about showing that you respect yourself enough to not settle for someone who thought they could replace you overnight. And here's the secret most women don't realize. The moment you start focusing on yourself, the moment you start leveling up, he notices. Maybe not right away, maybe not in an obvious way, but it happens. He starts to hear about how well you're doing, how much you've changed, how you're glowing without him. And nothing messes with a man's mind more than the realization that you didn't need him to be happy. Because let's be real, he expected you to be stuck. He expected you to dwell, to fall apart, to make it easy for him to move on while you stayed in the past. But when you do the opposite, when you focus on yourself, on your growth, on becoming the best version of you, it forces him to question everything. And that's the moment he starts to regret. That's the moment he realizes that the new relationship, the rebound, the distraction, none of it filled the space you left behind. Because real value isn't something you replace. It's something you recognize too late. So let him go. Let him believe he's won. Let him think he's moved on, because the best revenge isn't proving your worth to him. It's realizing you never had to in the first place. It's easy to look at a man who left and think he's moved on effortlessly. He's with someone new, acting unbothered, living life as if you never mattered. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing the lie. You'll start thinking that maybe he never cared, that maybe you were just another chapter he closed without a second thought. But here's the truth. Moving on isn't the same as healing. A man can replace you, but that doesn't mean he's healed from you. That doesn't mean he's forgotten the connection, the memories, or the way you made him feel. It just means he's avoiding reality. And this is what so many women don't realize. Men don't process breakups the way women do. They don't sit in their emotions, reflect, and grow immediately after a split. They distract themselves, they run from the pain, and the easiest way to do that? Find someone new. That's why so many men jump into relationships right after a breakup. It's not because they've found something better, it's because they refuse to sit with their emotions long enough to understand what they've lost. It's because facing the truth takes maturity, and most men aren't ready for that level of self-reflection. Instead, they chase temporary highs. They look for quick validation, for someone new to fill the space you left behind. But here's where it all backfires. When a man avoids healing, his wounds don't disappear, they just get buried. And sooner or later, they resurface. Maybe it happens when the excitement of the new relationship wears off. Maybe it happens when he realizes that this new woman doesn't understand him the way you did. Maybe it happens in the quiet moments, late at night, when he's left alone with nothing but his thoughts. But eventually, he will feel the loss. This is why so many men come back. Not always with words, not always with an apology, but in the ways they check up on you. The unexpected likes on social media, the random text messages, the mutual friends who suddenly mention that he's been asking about you. Because even if he doesn't say it outright, he's realizing that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. And when he finally sees that his distraction didn't erase the past, that's when the regret begins to settle in. But by then, it won't matter, because by then you'll be on a different level. You won't be the same person he walked away from. You won't be sitting around waiting for validation from a man who chose to run instead of face his emotions. You'll have healed, grown, and moved forward in ways he never did. And that's what truly separates the ones who win the breakup from the ones who simply survive it. It's not about who moves on first. It's about who actually heals, evolves, and becomes untouchable. So let him do whatever he needs to do. Let him pretend, let him distract himself, let him run. Because at the end of the day, the person who truly wins is the one who doesn't have to fake their happiness. The biggest trap you can fall into after a breakup is believing that his new life, his new relationship, and his new behavior define your worth. That just because he seems happy, just because he moved on quickly, it somehow means you weren't enough. But this is where so many people get it wrong. His actions have nothing to do with your value and everything to do with his own inability to sit with himself. A man who truly heals, a man who truly reflects, doesn't need to put on a show. He doesn't need to rush into something new, flaunt his happiness, or go out of his way to prove he's better off. Because when someone is genuinely at peace, they don't seek validation from the outside world. They don't need to make sure you see how well they're doing. They just live. But when a man knows he's lost something valuable, when he knows deep down that what he had with you was real, but he wasn't ready to handle it, that's when the facade begins. He won't admit it, of course. He'll act like everything is perfect. But that's just it. It's an act. Because when someone is truly over a situation, they don't spend time trying to prove it. This is where your power comes in. If you let his actions control your emotions, you give him exactly what he wants, a reaction. He wants to know that you're still affected, that you're still checking, that you're still wondering. Because as long as you care, he doesn't have to face the possibility that he was the one who lost. But the second you detach, the second you shift your focus away from him and back onto yourself, everything shifts. Because now he doesn't get the satisfaction of knowing he still has power over you. Now, he's the one left wondering why you're not chasing, why you're not reacting, why you've suddenly stopped caring. And nothing is more unsettling to a man who expected you to be stuck. This is why walking away with grace is the greatest thing you can do. It's not about pretending. It's not about playing games. It's about genuinely understanding that your worth was never tied to his ability to see it. That just because he moved on quickly doesn't mean he's healed. And just because he replaced you doesn't mean he's won. Because real value isn't proven through validation. It's proven through who you become after the storm. And when you show up as a woman who no longer needs to question her worth, no longer needs to seek answers, no longer needs to react to a man who didn't appreciate her, that's when you truly win.